doing absolutely fantastic. How are we doing for you?
Oh, doing good, doing good. You've got the brothers Grimm, Eli, and Ethan Storment over here. Dakota is off doing military stuff. We got military man. He's
Yeah,
gone again.
serving the country and stuff. Like, come on, what's more important, the country or fantasy football?
Fantasy football, clearly.
Okay,
Clearly.
absolutely. Yep.
Absolutely. So he is, off doing that. We're going to have a good time here, though, today. Still get you the breakdown. And Dakota actually did also have some time to leave us notes as well that we'll touch on a few of those as well and get you guys some of his points along the way. But lots to break down, lots of news, lots of craziness.
Yes.
Good.
Lots of craziness. Great weekend though, and football in general. Some outstanding games. Some great fantasy performances. We're going to talk about it a little bit, but
Yes.
overall, really great weekend.
Yeah, I mean, this was a great weekend for football. I think in general, that Bills-Vikings game especially was insane. Will go down as one of the better games of not just this season, but honestly, within recent memory of NFL football. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, really cool experience. I think you'll remember where you are when you saw some of that. I'll talk about it a little bit later, but yeah, that game was absolutely insane.
Yeah, just craziness all over the place. So, but it was good, and we had a good week as the fantasy play callers made some good calls as far as waiver wire pickups and things. Some guys that we'll still have on the list possibly this week. And if not, we'll touch on those guys and do a little tooting of our horns over here.
Yeah, hey, we got to
As
toot it
well.
where we can. Absolutely. Kind of
So
tell you why you should tune in.
exactly. Listening to us is a good idea.
It's good for your health. It's ordered by a doctor, by the
That's right.
fantasy doctor.
It will lower your blood pressure because you'll have a better fantasy week, and
Yes,
therefore,
absolutely. Less screaming at the TV guaranteed.
exactly, money back guaranteed. Since you're watching this for free on YouTube and not paying anything.
Yes,
So
exactly. Take it to
perfect.
the bank.
Perfect. But let's start with a little bit of the sadness. We do have some injuries this week that were actually pretty big.
Yeah.
As well. So crazy that way too, but yeah.
The worst part of fantasy football and football in general is just injuries. Seeing your player go out and seeing him go down is not a great feeling for, of course, the player first, but for fantasy football players, we dread that moment as well. So, let's
Yeah.
go. Let's jump in through. Let's talk a little bit about the injuries, and then especially some of these bigger ones. We'll talk about kind of the impact to, I think, the team, and more importantly, kind of the fantasy rosters as we go forward.
For sure.
Let's start off with the big one. I think this is the biggest one out of anybody. We got some news here today. Cooper Kupp had that ankle injury on the sidelines there. Did find out today that he is going to be put on IR, but he is designated to return, so it'll be out for at least 4 weeks with that high ankle injury. So good news is he does have the potential to come back. And in 4 weeks, we're looking at kind of right in the fantasy playoffs, or close to it. So that's a huge blow to the Rams, number one, but also to the fantasy rosters.
So let me ask you a question on this one, just because it's kind of a unique situation with such a high-end player, and such a weird kind of situation for fantasy. Let's say, for instance, you have Cooper Kupp on your roster, and you are not sure if you're going to make the playoffs without him. Would you try to sell him to somebody who might be already getting into the playoffs or has a really good shot already? Maybe they'd be willing to give up some assets to have someone come back, or what do you think?
Yeah, I actually would entertain that because we think about it. We're going into week 11, right? This
Mm-hmm.
week is this week's upcoming week 11. He's out for 4 weeks, so that's including week 11. So he could potentially be back by week 15, 14, if it's lucky, if he's a little bit, well, it's 4 weeks guaranteed, so probably 15,
15.
right?
Yeah, 15 is the first week he
Yeah,
can come back, which fantasy playoffs usually start week
our
15.
15, 16, 17, yeah, that's after the change of the extra game. So yeah, I actually would. It's a good point to maybe look at shopping him, and if you can get some assets for him that can help you make the fantasy playoffs where you're not going to make it now, especially without him. That would be really great. And if you are a team that is really sitting really well, that's not a
Yeah.
bad strategy to look at acquiring him. The only caution that I have with acquiring him is if the Rams season continues to go the direction that it's going, which is not a great direction right now.
Good point.
Do they have the potential of just shutting him down for the remainder of 3 more games? Because the likelihood of them making the playoffs right now is not very high. It's actually very
Yeah,
almost getting to the impossible.
to that point, Eli, I think that's a good point, and I think I would maybe be much more confident selling than I would be necessarily
Yeah.
buying. Which might mean as a seller you have to take a little bit of a lower price too. So keep that in mind. But
Yeah,
worth
absolutely.
a
But if
thought.
you could, but if you can't, if you're not going to make the playoffs, then there's no point in bringing him back anyways. Yeah, try to get some assets for him um and get something out of him, right? Instead of just clogging up a roster spot. So I think that was a great idea.
For sure, for sure.
Excellent. Going forward here, a couple other ones. Josh Allen, elbow. He had, of course, the amazing game out there. Didn't seem very affected by it. As far as at least to my my eyes, looked pretty good. Did throw a couple interceptions, which again could maybe be part of the elbow, but he is likely to play again next week, so not much to talk about there. He'll just limit his practice reps, is what they were saying on the elbow, but should be good to go for next week as well. Jerry Jeudy had a high ankle injury. Did you see this one or see any highlights of this one? This looked absolutely horrible when it first happened. He went down. It was a non-contact injury. When I first went down, I was talking to my wife. She has him on fantasy on her fantasy team, so she was very interested to see what was going on. And I told her that I thought it was Achilles immediately because he was grabbing at his ankle right by the Achilles, and it was a non-contact injury. So I thought for sure he was done. So this is actually, in my opinion, good news. They said it's a high ankle sprain, 3 to 6 week injury. Should be able to come back hopefully before the end of the season. So better news than what was initially anticipated, I think.
Yeah, but this pretty much puts Jerry Jeudy as a drop, I would say,
Yeah.
in most fantasy situations, who is a low-end wide receiver, probably 3, I think, so far this year. And then
Boomer bust too, I feel like.
Yeah, and then he's going to be out until the playoffs at least, essentially. So.
Yeah, I completely agree. What do you feel like it boosts anybody else on the team? Anybody to look at on the Broncos for pass catchers in regards to fantasy? Does this boost Greg Dulcich?
That's actually maybe a better point. I was going to say KJ Hamler is interesting to me because of how similar he plays seemingly to Lockett. And there was that Russell Wilson Lockett connection that was forever. That maybe if he steps up and into that role, he might be interesting. But he's more of a watch than a pickup for me right now. Dulcich I like just in general. So yeah, more targets for him. Sutton obviously. I like in general, although you probably overdrafted him like I did, which I totally understand. But you have what you have now, and might as well keep him.
I agree. I think that it does help maybe Sutton get maybe a target or two more. I think Dulcich will get a little bit more work. If KJ Hamler does come back, he was out last week with a hamstring. We'll have to see if he comes back. But I agree on the Hamler part of it because of his speed, and it kind of helps that replace what Jerry Jeudy was able to do a little bit with there. Kendall Hinton got a little bit of play too. So unless you're desperate, I would try to avoid it probably mostly just for the fact that it just is the lowest scoring offense in the league. So, but gives you a little bit of extra boost of some of these players.
Yeah, having the number 2 or number 3 option in the lowest scoring offense in the league is not appealing. So,
not a winning fantasy formula. I'll just say that. So, Juju, this looked absolutely terrible. Got smoked, and then he had his hands up in that, seizure motion on the ground there and had to be carted off with the concussion. So it looks like, from what they're saying, that is just a concussion, and they're monitoring. He's going through the protocol. He will be out this week, but should be back week 12. Did you see this play?
Yes, absolutely, and it was brutal. It was a brutal hit and looked clean to me for the most part. But I mean, they just hit so hard it doesn't matter. And then obviously, with what happened with Tua, it doesn't surprise me that he's already out for this next week.
Yes.
And it wouldn't
Yep.
surprise me, to be honest, if he's out like
He's up.
2 weeks or so. I don't think they'll go past that, but I think you're maybe even questionable coming into week 12. But we'll see. Just because the league has to be careful with these situations after all the news they've gotten this year.
But. No, I agree completely. It's something to definitely monitor. There'll be some updates throughout the week through the protocol. But yeah, I wouldn't be shocked either. You make a really good point. Fantasy wise, I know Hardman was out this last week when Juju got hurt. We'll see how Hardman comes back. But especially for this next week, is it Tony season?
It is so Tony season. And this is a toot for myself here, if I could, for a minute. And now, obviously, I did not want Juju to be hurt.
Long time Tony Truther over here.
I know, but
don't be taking all that credit.
No, you are a long time Tony Truther, but he burned you too many times. As soon as he touched the Chiefs, I'm back in. So you're right. You are definitely the Tony guy of this group. But as of late, the last couple weeks.
Yeah.
And don't want Juju to be hurt. I drafted Juju in just about every league I could. So last thing I want is for him to be hurt.
He actually has been playing good the last 3 weeks. He's gotten made his targets more efficient. He actually scored a few touchdowns. So, I mean, that really does suck.
Yeah, and it sucks. And obviously, once again, more for him and the team and everybody else than us. But still, as a fantasy football player, it does suck. And wish him all the best. But it is going to be Kadarius Toney time, and that.
Yep.
In my opinion, Kadarius Toney is looking more and more each day like a league winner.
He looked so good. Did you see the video that the catch that he went on the sideline? He adjusted his gloves mid-air and then caught the ball.
Amazing.
You're just making fools of people out there. Just absolutely insane. His quickness, I think, is the best way to describe it. I always describe it to everybody. It's not he has great straight line speed as well, but it's the fact that he can get up to speed so fast and so elusive. It's fun to watch.
Yeah, definitely exciting, and he's so confident and smooth in those situations. The confidence it takes to adjust your glove mid-route in an NFL game with two defenders by him, also by the way.
Yeah, and then he was just celebrated like nothing happened. I'm like, oh my gosh. Now I can see why there's a big difference between the average Joe and NFL wide receivers that can do that kind of stuff. That's insane. But anyways, we'll keep an eye on that piece of it. Another huge one here, wanted to touch base on. Zach Ertz tore his ACL out for the year. Huge hit to the Arizona Cardinals offense. What do you think the fantasy impact on this one is here, Ethan?
Well, one, obviously, if you have Ertz, you're going to be scrambling a little bit, for a tight end. The Cardinals did take, I believe, the first tight end off the board.
Trey McBride, yep.
And Trey McBride. Now, it was in the second round, but still the first tight end off the board.
Best pass catching tight end in last year's draft, correct?
There was mixed reviews going in. Everyone kind of agreed to that once he was drafted first, though. So I don't know. To be honest with you, I didn't study the tight ends as much as the other positions. To be honest with you, you should have less fantasy impact. But I've heard good things. It'll be interesting to kind of see what he does. And if you're a Zach Ertz owner and there's not a good tight end pickup, I would not be against just taking Trey McBride. They took him in the second round for a reason. He is known as a good pass catcher. I know that much.
It could be worth a stash. It'll be interesting how that plays out. I think it solidifies a little bit. I think it hurts first off Murray. I think Zach Ertz was that great security blanket, good touchdown, red zone threat. He just always ran smooth routes. He wasn't ever really explosive, especially in his age, but he was just always there for Kyler Murray. And so we'll see. I think the one person that helps the most is Rondell Moore, I think. With he's already been exploding a little bit, and I think he'll get maybe some more targets. But
isn't Hollywood coming back?
He is. In a couple of weeks, it should work out. Or is he going to be back week 12? Did I put that one on there?
Yeah, on here it says week 12.
Okay.
I thought
it was longer than that.
I thought it was shorter. See, although I could just be optimistic because I have him in a couple of weeks. So
he was pretty good the first few weeks, getting all those targets.
with no DeAndre Hopkins in the offense. And, yes, yeah, he looked great. Yeah, so it looks like week 12 is what they're saying. So you're right on here, which is good.
Just in 2 weeks, so it's coming up quick.
Yeah, so I mean, it'll be the Cardinals' offense is going to be interesting with Rondell Moore kind of coming on, and them getting Hollywood Brown back. Zach Ertz loss, I agree, does definitely hurt them, but it's almost like you take a little bit of reliability out and then add a little bit of big play potential back in, and we'll see what happens. So.
Yeah, completely agree. Speaking of Kyler Murray, he was out this last week with a hamstring injury. He practiced most of the week lightly before he was out, so it sounds like he will be back this next week. By the way, did you watch HBO's new Hard Knocks, the first episode?
I have not yet. It's on my to-do list, but I have not yet.
Pretty good. Pretty good. It's actually really shows a little bit of dysfunction with the Cardinals and how they've been playing recently. So if you haven't seen it, definitely a really good watch. And they showed a little bit of the respect they have for DeAndre Hopkins, which just makes sense. He just changes the whole culture when he came back. But
for sure. And you know what? Nothing adds fuel to a fire like throwing a camera in someone's face.
Yeah, it's true.
In the middle of a confrontation. So we'll see how they deal, but it should be fun to watch, hopefully.
Yeah, we get to see the collapse in real time. We never had this experience before in the season, so it'd be really cool to see. Mark Andrews out last week. He is questionable play. He has not ACL, I put it in there wrong. AC joint injury, which is in the shoulder. So he usually it's a more of a pain tolerance type of thing. Actually, I had an AC joint injury in high school football. Definitely not fun, and re-injury is possible, but you can put extra padding there to help. So sounds like he is going to trend to be questionable in week 12. So I would definitely
week 11.
Or week 11, excuse me, not week 12. Yeah. So. Zeke, he is 3 weeks into his injury. It's supposed to be around a 3 to 4 week injury, so he's likely to play this week. So the Tony Pollard truthers are going to have to go back to their caves a little bit. He's been playing really well, but it should come down here a little bit. And DeAndre Swift is ramping up. I know it doesn't feel that way, but some injury experts kind of said that he should be getting more work here going forward. If this is like his 3rd week back already, so he's been really limited for snaps, so that should be starting to change here a little bit.
Well, and the thing about that is if we mentioned, with Cooper Kupp, it's like the Lions don't have a chance at the playoffs this year. They're not going to rush him back. If he feels any type of soreness or anything, this is what they're going to do with him. And as much as it sucks for fantasy football players, I mean, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. So he should be still limited, and I even expect him being 100%. It's still going to be a split with Williams. So even at 100%, I think it was supposed to be like a 55-45 split. That's just what they want to do there in Detroit. So, Mike Williams is starting to practice. Just heard today that he was able to practice, and Keenan Allen was the same thing. Mike Williams he has a slight chance to play this week, but it does sound like he probably is not going to. He's a little early on his return on the ankle. Keenan Allen is starting to practice, but for Keenan Allen, I wish Dakota was here because he would feel the same way, but
you would.
Just don't have any hope, and then you'll be okay with Keenan Allen. Just until he steps foot or you get the final confirmed like 10 minutes before kickoff, don't even do anything with him. Even then, he might re-injure. So,
have a backup plan, guys, for sure.
Yes, Keenan Allen. And then a couple last ones here. David Njoku, he had the ankle injury here as well. He came out last week and said he was going to play for sure week 10, which is last week, and of course he didn't. Players are always a little bit more confident than the trainers or the doctors. But it does sound like he is trending to return this week or next, depending. I would lean more towards week 12 to give him that extra week, but we'll have to keep an eye on that one.
Yep, rather be safe than sorry for sure. So.
Yeah. Gus Edwards does have a good chance. He was on a bye last week. Has a good chance playing this week. It was a hamstring injury. That's a low key one we'll talk about later in our waiver wire pickups. And then we just talked about Marquise Hollywood. He should be back in week 12, so not this week, but next to get some much needed reinforcements for the Cardinals.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. For sure. And
Lot,
speaking of the Cardinals and the weirdness
yes.
that's going on there is a bit of news that I'm sure you guys have already heard from Twitter or wherever else. But Eno Benjamin has been cut from the Cardinals roster. This is big news. James Conner's backup is gone because he didn't want to be James Conner's backup from the sounds of it.
That is insane. He was a starter for what, 4 weeks, I believe, and he played. I mean, he didn't play like out of this world, but he played serviceable at least, and had a one good good to great game then there. So, I mean, to go from that to walking on the streets, that's just absolutely insane to me.
It is, and you know what? It's good of the team, honestly, in my opinion, to let him go. Because if he wants out, like I'm glad that he gets an opportunity to go find something else. But I do worry for
Uh,
him. Like, I don't know what he's gonna go
yeah,
find or what he thinks is around the
grass
corner.
grass
So
isn't always greener, especially with you have tape on yourself now, which is not bad. It's not bad tape, but it's not. You
yeah,
get to decide what you do in your career tape. You know what I mean? So there's a big difference there
good
between the
point.
two.
Good way to say it.
Um, um, One other injury I just wanted to touch on, and let's then definitely want to jump into the waiver wires. This just came out today. Khalil Herbert had a hip injury, and he actually just got placed on IR. He'll be out for 4 weeks with a hip injury. So that has some big impacts when it comes to fantasy football. And David Montgomery is going to have that backfield to himself for at least 4 weeks. Now, who's the RB1 in that team? I think at this point we all know it's Justin Fields. So I think that to be noted, but it's still a big piece. I mean, they were splitting you know uh 60-40 typically for split. So that's a big percentage of carries that are going to be kind of vacated there.
Yeah, and I did hear a lot of fans of their late round pick, Tristan Ebner, this offseason at the running back who's going to take,
Oh,
um, you know, Khalil Herbert's spot here. So he's someone that, like, just kind of, I'm going to be keeping an eye on. I encourage, the play callers, keep an eye on this guy. Don't go get him now. But if Ebner ends up kind of carving out a bit of more of a pass, he's a smaller back, so it might be more of a pass catching role or something. He's going to be interesting to kind of see what they do with him now. So
yeah, no, I think that's great. I actually, that's a really good eye to keep an eye, especially being out for 4 weeks, gives him a chance to prove himself, right? To see what kind of talent's there. I've always, this year I was a huge Herbert fan. I mean, for what he's done on the field, he had that one really explosive week. There's this really cool stat I just want to touch on real quick. By Jacob Gibbs on Twitter, shout out to him, is an explosive rush rate. So basically, players what percentage of their runs are over 10 yards. And Khalil Herbert was the second best person, or player, at 18% of his rush yards or rushes were above 10 yards or more. The only one that had more than him was Justin Fields, his quarterback teammate, at 24%, which is crazy. This list is really a who's who too. So this is a really cool list. I did tweet it out at my Twitter, at Fantasy Storm, so you could look it up too. But yeah, I just wanted to point out that I was huge on him. I thought he was a really high end handcuff. If he had the opportunity, would be close to a league winner. So I think that's a huge blow for a lot of fantasy rosters.
yeah, for sure. No, absolutely. He's been fantastic every time he does touch the ball, and um, having those running backs and those read option offenses also is just
Yeah.
really great, just in general. So, yeah, it sucks, but it'll be interesting to see if you have Montgomery. You're dancing for
I was
joy.
just gonna say that
So,
David Montgomery's been good too.
yeah.
I just think Herbert's been playing a lot better than him, but Herbert's been really good and serviceable, and now he's gonna get all the work. So, what was his nickname, Ethan? That we've heard and from other fantasy people in the industry.
David Opportunity.
David Opportunity.
He's got
Get all
another
those.
opportunity coming his way. So
Yeah,
we'll
yes,
see
he
what
does.
happens. So.
Anyways, all right, let's get into the good stuff. Let's get into some waiver wires. Help the people out here.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I mean, we'll jump off, with the running backs here. This is going to be a little bit of horn tooting Again, here you guys are gonna get tired of me tooting my horn this week, because Rachaad White blew up this week, and a part of that is the Leonard Fournette injury, but part of that was also just getting him more involved in general because the Bucs are looking for sparks in their offense, which we've kind of talked about previously. But I mean, he ran for over 100 yards, right? We've mentioned him now. This will be the 4th episode that we brought up to his name, and it's now time where if you did not listen to us in the past 3 episodes, you're gonna have to pay up. 45% rostered. This is probably the, in my opinion, free agent pickup this week. So make sure you go out and don't overspend on him. I mean, but at the same time, I would pretty comfortably say 20 to 25% of FAAB, if you still have it left, is going to be something you might have to put down if you're looking for a running back this week. And what do you think, Eli?
I 110% agree. The 2 running backs that I really wanted to target, and by the way, I really looked this up because you were talking about it. We brought him up the first, in October 3rd was our first episode that we brought him up. We brought him up, like you said, 4 other times after that, or 3 other times after that, not including this time. So we have been talking about him for a long time at the Fantasy Play Callers, and it's been actually all 3 of us have brought him up at different times for picking him up. So if you haven't done it, shame on you, number 1. And number 2, now you know to listen to our advice. But no, for real, I think this is the best pickup of the week. They just came out and did say that he is going to be the starter after they have a bye week this week. So, but after they come back, he is going to supplant Fournette. Now that doesn't mean he's getting all the shares and all the work. Obviously, it's still going to be a pretty close, even split. Maybe he'll get a little bit more, but that means he is going to get more opportunities, and he's looked explosive on the opportunity that he's gotten. That's why we talked about him so much. And I think the Tampa Bay offense is starting to get themselves together a little bit, right? From what we saw last week, Julio Jones actually looked good. He had a great catch and touchdown. Tom was looking sharp out there, throwing to Godwin and Evans, and Otten has been looked good for the tight end position. So I do think they're starting to put stuff together a little bit, and if they can even get close to where they were for their offense last year and the year before, I mean, you got yourself a very good fantasy asset.
Yeah, for sure. And I didn't actually know that they had a buy coming up. I didn't click in my head. So as far as waiver, the nice part about that is that you could probably spend a little less and still get them. So maybe 15 to 20. If you really need a running back, though, there might not be a lot of other opportunities like this for a little while.
Yeah, I think this is the most important pickup. Now, it obviously won't help you initially, but I really would prioritize Rachaad White over everybody else that we talk about today.
Fair point.
Perfect. All right, let me jump into mine. This will probably be if I was ranking him, probably my second choice of pickup. Second or third. I like my other one here too. I like yours too, but Isaiah Pacheco. We've talked about him before. I think everybody ran to the waiver wire when he was announced as the starter, and unfortunately, that did not work out for everybody, including myself. I picked him up in a few leagues, and it became a 3-tier timeshare that week. And really, he got some work, and he did start technically, but he did not have a great game or explosive game that week. But the good news is if you did hold on to him or now haven't, you can try to pick him up. But this past week, he got his most snaps he's had through the whole year. So he had 56% of the snaps, which is excellent. He had 16 rushes for 82 yards. He looked good and explosive, which he always has been. The only concern is the involvement in the passing game. It looks like Jerick McKinnon has really established himself as that go-to passing back for the Kansas City Chiefs. So, again, you won't get a lot of that, but, the Chiefs are going to be up in most of the games, right? We would think anyways, based off of their offense and in how they're scoring, and they'll have a lot of goal line opportunities. And I think going forward, based off of the usage I saw last week, I think he's going to be the primary first, second down back, and then also the valuable touches on the goal line, which you want in a high-powered offense like this. The biggest piece, though, I wanted to highlight, and I'll talk about this later, though, Clyde only had 4 total snaps. Let me repeat that. 4 total snaps. So the 3-headed monster is no longer one head is shrunk down to so small. So now it's really the 2-headed between Pacheco and Jerick McKinnon. So I think he's a really good pickup this week.
Yeah, no, completely agree. This is definitely actually maybe your other one, which we can get into in a minute, might be, but these are definitely good pickups here.
Yeah.
Pacheco, if he's available, should be rostered in every league. He's only owned at 24%, which is crazy. He's
Yeah.
taking 56% of the snaps, guys, on the Kansas City Chiefs offense, which, by the way, just got Kadarius Toney, and also is really heating up and has been doing a lot better. The last
Patrick Mahomes has looked amazing.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like get yourself a piece of this offense any way you can.
An upside too.
Yeah, and he's got huge upside. And Pacheco is actually a crazy good athlete who can break big runs, and actually looked decent in the pass game as well in preseason. So I hasn't seen much of it in regular season, but did look decent in the few passes he got during preseason. So
yeah, absolutely. Let's hear yours. I'm interested in this one.
Yeah, so Keontae Ingram is a very interesting prospect that is now going to be the backup for James Conner in the Arizona Cardinals offense. And so what happened, obviously, is Eno Benjamin, as we mentioned earlier, he left. And Keontae Ingram is the only guy left on the roster, guys. He's owned in 0% of leagues. Like, the actual backups, there's actually other people on the roster, but it's Corey Clement and Tyson Williams are the people that are pulling up from the practice squad. Yeah,
Ooh.
exactly.
I think I hear an owl.
Exactly. And so Ingram is going to be interesting. He's definitely a better passing back probably than a straightforward running back. So we'll see if he kind of takes some of those snaps that Eno Benjamin was getting. I'm hopeful that he will, which would make him, possibly playable coming up in the next few weeks here. And even if not, one of the things that we talked about previously that we were looking at, and one of the reasons why we knew Rachaad White was going to be, one of those people that you needed to keep an eye on and go roster, was because we want the backups for older running backs that run with power, because they just violent runners that are getting up there in age tend to get hurt a lot, and so we want their backups. Ingram is now that guy. I think if I were to say James Conner goes down tomorrow, Ingram is going to be a huge fantasy pickup. So don't overspend. You can get him basically for free, and you should get him for free. But he's worth at least keeping an eye on, if not rostering at the moment. So.
No, yeah, I think it's a great call. Especially since this move has been made and the offense is, it's still a good offense. They'll still score, and if James Conner's getting all the work, they don't have anything else behind him. I think that's a good stash for sure, from that perspective. So, I will jump into mine, and then we can touch base on the one Dakota had down if you want to do that, Ethan, or I can either way. Mine won't take too long because we've talked about this player a lot as well. It's kind of been also one of our Rachaad White's type. I think we talked about him at least 2 or 3 other times. That'll be Jaylen Warren for the Pittsburgh Steelers, back up to currently starter to Najee Harris. He's currently 27% owned. We talked about him a lot, so I won't spend a lot of time on him. He's looked good. He's looked explosive. Najee's been hurt. He's been ineffective. It's well documented how much of a bust he's been this year. I saw a stat the other day. I'm trying to remember what it was, but I think he's only had just 1 or 2 runs over 10 yards or something like that. It was something crazy. Like, he's just been super inefficient and has not looked good. Where Jaylen Warren has looked explosive in his limited touches. And then this past week, he had his highest snap share, which really they came out and said that they wanting to get him more involved. Well, they're proving it, right? So now he's at a 40% snap share, and of course Najee's at the 60. I wouldn't be surprised if that starts to become more of a 50-50 snap share going forward. So it'll be very interesting to see. I heard a comparison out there through the fantasy community that somebody said Jalen Warren kind of looks like a Austin Eckler type, which I thought was kind of very interesting because they're kind of almost around the same size. So it that's kind of beside the point. I think he's a good pickup, but maybe he's not Austin Eckler, but I think he's just a really good person to have on your bench. And if Najee goes down with the injury that he already has, or if he just starts to take over a little bit more of the backfield, you got yourself a good fantasy asset.
Yeah, Jalen Warren is definitely someone that I'm targeting in every league. So I completely agree. I just think that he's put up 10 points in PPR the last 2 weeks with a 40% snap share. If Najee goes down, who's, as you mentioned, is already injured, or if Warren just keeps outperforming him, we could see this swing really fast. And you're going to want him before that happens, not after, as we always talk about here. Get him beforehand. Don't wait until he has the big game, then have to go pay up. This is a guy that in my opinion, you should be targeting pretty heavily. So.
Yeah, I think that's amazing advice, Ethan, and I think we should really hone in on that. Like, be a week early. I think that's the best way to say it on for fantasy football. If you're a week early than the consensus, if you can spot these players, and that's what we're trying to do here for you guys. Our goal is to try to make you guys successful and make you get that dubs every week to get to the playoffs, win those championships. But in order to do so, you have to be a week early in these guys. Get these guys, stash them, and then when they hit, you don't have to pay up for them. You have a great asset you can start, or a great trade asset which you can go get and upgrade at a different position. So I think that is a really good call out.
Cool.
Perfect. I'll let you. That's it. Oh, look, we want to talk about. Go ahead and talk about Dakotas.
Yeah. So Dakota's got Gus Edwards on here. Now, obviously, Gus Edwards in that read option offense, which we always love running backs in these read option offenses. They just get bigger holes and more opportunities. The defense has to worry about the quarterback taking the ball. And Edwards, has really done well over the last few weeks here. There has been some Kenyon Drake, kind of competition with him as well. But Edwards has put up some pretty solid numbers in his own right. So definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. And he was when that Kenyon Drake had that 2 touchdown game. He was out, so that's why Kenyon Drake kind of blew up there, and he had that injury, which he should. We talked about an injury. He should be coming back. Kenyon Drake's looked good though for Kenyon Drake. I just can't believe I'd say that words before the season, but no, he's looked pretty decent. But I really think that once Gus is fully healthy, he should get the majority of the work. And by majority, again, we never talk about even 70% shares now. It's really more, maybe a 60-40, something like that. So.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So. And then a couple other hits here that I want to mention real quick. These are the ones we always talk about. These are people that are probably not available on your platforms, but just check, because if these guys are available, then these should be the priority pickups, right? Immediately. So the first one is Eli Mitchell, which, first off, great name. Great job there in naming him, and that's probably why he's successful. But he's owned 58% of leagues. Really interesting this week, Ethan, with Christian McCaffrey and Eli Mitchell. I mean, it was a bigger split than a lot of people thought, and Eli Mitchell did look good. So I think that'll continue. They actually did. Actually, Shanahan came out, I don't know if you saw, said he does want to have some split workload between those two. So I think that would definitely be a good pickup. Either one for handcuff, and then two for that flex value that you have.
Yeah, and it makes sense from the team perspective, right? Like, we want to make sure it makes sense on their team. But Elijah Mitchell is a great way to keep Christian McCaffrey healthy for the playoffs. And I do think the Niners are in the playoff hunt right now. They're in a good spot.
Really good spot, yeah.
And so, look, they're gonna run Elijah Mitchell because, one, he's very effective when he does touch the ball, and two, keep Christian McCaffrey healthy. Let him go off in the playoffs. if I'm Shanahan, that's what I'm thinking. Not that I don't want him on the field during the regular season, but I don't have a problem making him a 50-50 split until then.
I'm not a 49ers fan, and I have Chris McCaffrey in a couple leagues, so burn him the F out.
40 touches a game, please.
Yeah, I don't care.
Totally understand, but I get what Shanahan's doing.
No,
I think it's really smart. So
I think it's really smart long term, especially for, they traded a lot of picks for him, and they want to keep him healthy. They think they have a really good chance this year at in the actual real playoffs. And I would agree, actually, based off of the run game's great. Jimmy Garoppolo's holding down. They have so many weapons on the passing game, and then their defense is really solid too. So they have the team. So it makes sense that they're trying to secure and keep their assets healthy. I hate it. I hate it a lot. But yeah, Elijah Mitchell's a good pickup. Jeff Wilson, he's picked up a couple weeks ago, still at 78%. That should be closer to 100. He is, man, it seems like he's the lead dog, actually. I mean, Miami.
yeah, he looks like RB1 in Miami, despite the fact that Raheem Mostert has played really well every time he's touched the ball. But whoever's getting the ball in that offense,
My gosh, that offense is just ridiculous.
whoever touches the ball there, you want them on your roster. So get Jeff Wilson if he's still available. Below whatever you got to get him.
Shame on you, first off, if he's still available. But after you get done beating yourself up, go ahead and just put him on the roster.
Add him in there, please.
Add him in there, please. So, and then the other thing I just want to touch on, and then we'll move on to definitely wide receivers, is just stashes. So, a couple names to throw out there. And Ethan, let me know if any other come to mind for you. But in your opinion, if you have on these, Alexander Madison, definitely one of the higher end handcuffs. He's shown he had the ability. Isaiah Spiller is actually taken off the secondary role to Austin Eckler. So I definitely something to keep in mind. That rookie, he kind of finally took over that role. And then Kenneth Gainwell with Miles Sanders. If he gets injured, he'd be a really good pickup in that higher powered offense.
Yeah, so Spiller's really interesting to me. He's had actually a lot of struggles. But a part of it is that he tore his abdomen late. I think it was like right before the combine process, doing something. He had like a tear in his abdomen because he ran like on the field. He looked really fast, but then he ran a slow 40, and people were wondering why. And it turns out he had an injury actually. But anyway, long story short, he might be just getting healthy. Like this might actually be the first we see of real Isaiah Spiller. And he looked very good in college. There was a lot of hype coming out about him. But because of some of that unexplained combine performance and some other things, he did fall down on the draft boards. But he's interesting. I definitely keep an eye on him for sure. So I love this call out. Good shout out.
Absolutely. Yeah, I didn't realize that. I know before the fantasy season, when we were talking about drafts, he was actually a very popular late round pick just for the fact that they talked about wanting to get somebody else involved with Austin Eckler to take off, some of that workload for him, especially in the rushing department. And everybody assumed to be this new rookie, Isaiah Spiller, and then he was like third on the depth chart until just recently. So very interesting. And yeah, if he's worked his way up, that he's done that for a reason. So something to really keep in mind and keep an eye on, and maybe worth a stash if you have the extra spot, especially this time of year. I know I want to harp on it, but injuries are happening more often. We're closer to the playoffs. This is the time that you want to, have these stashes because the free agency is picked through. There's not a lot out there. And then you want to have these people just for if somebody gets injured, these are the people that can propel you to fantasy glory, in my opinion. So
agreed, for sure.
Excellent. I think we're mostly good to go on the running backs. Anything else you want to touch on?
No. Let's get into the wide receivers, though. I'm excited.
Yeah, I am too. Actually, some good ones to cover here. I think Ethan, yours is probably the highlight of the week, and another pat on the back. Did you have him last week?
Yes. So Christian Watson, guys, he blew up. And he's a really exciting prospect that it's been brought up a few times in the show as well. But last week, it was me who told you to go out and kind of take a peek at him.
It was me.
It was me. It was. I got a little hate. I'm not even gonna lie about it last week because he's been not great. But this is another guy who's a rookie.
I do want to let you know. Sorry to interrupt you, but I did pick him up in quite a few leagues after you said that. It worked out really well.
Good. Well, I'm glad you listen to my advice, even though I don't. So, which is weird. But that's how that works. But no, here's the thing about Christian Watson. He has issues dropping balls, and we saw some of that earlier, and that was coming from college as well. But this is the dude who has the highest RAS score since Calvin Johnson, which RAS is relative athletic score, guys. So, I mean, this dude is a freak. He's 6'5". He runs a 4.3. His 3-cone drill was actually incredibly fast. I mean, he is a certified freak of nature athlete. Aaron Rodgers is throwing him the ball and desperately needs weapons. Okay?
Desperately. I mean, emphasize the desperately.
Desperately. Right? And Christian Watson has to step up. Now, I do think that he's going to be a little bit boom bust, so I'm warning you now. That there's a chance that might be the case. So, proceed a little bit with caution, but at the same time, he's 9% owned. That's ridiculous. That's not even. That's dumb.
Proceed with caution, but don't proceed with caution. Go after him.
But go after him because people are going to be hunting for him. He had his breakout week.
Yeah.
And luckily for me, last week I was a week early as we try to be here. But
yep.
But now is the time. If being a week early is amazing, but being on time still matters. So go out and get him.
Yeah, absolutely.
So.
No, I think this is a great call. Great job, Ethan, last week. Like I said, I took your advice, and I'm very happy. But I didn't start him anywhere, which he had the 3-touchdown game, which hurt a little bit to see that on the bench. But you're happy it's on the bench. So, really good call. I think we talked about this last week too. But with the wide receivers that are there, and with Dobbs going down, which really was his kind of besides Lazard, which Lazard's good, but he doesn't have that other tier, you know what I mean, as far as athletic ability, as far as being an elite wide receiver in the league. I think he's a great 2, if a 2, and he's been really good in his role, I think. But I think they're desperate to have that number 1 playmaker, and I know it's only 1 week, but I mean, he showed that he can do it. Now he's shown throughout the year to have a little bit of case of the old dropsies. He's not exactly the all-star when it comes to catching the ball, which is very important for wide receivers. But my gosh, can he blow off the top and score those long bombs?
Yeah, he's one of those guys that if you're on the defense, I mean, you're calling out his number at the beginning of every play to make sure that someone is over the top. Because if you don't, I mean, there isn't a cornerback in the league that's going to take on. I mean, think about Calvin Johnson in a 1v1 on a go route. I mean, it's a nightmare.
Yeah,
and that's who this guy is athletically, not as a player yet, obviously, but athletically, that's who he looks like. And so, he definitely helps that offense, and hopefully they find creative ways to use him. That's the hope here. So
yeah, absolutely. He had a 40% target share this week, just to emphasize, where he's at. Now it was a lower passing volume this week for the Packers. They ran the ball quite a bit, but still, having a 40% target share in a Aaron Rodgers offense, I mean, that's got me drooling everywhere. Yeah, well, yeah. Because he's a Jet.
Yeah, because it makes sense, right? It's like just get him the ball. So yeah.
Okay. No, great call. And we'll just emphasize this one last time. I promise we'll stop talking about it. But this is why you keep a spot open at the end of your bench for some of these stashes. Get him a week before. Again, the worst thing that could have happened for Christian Watson, I threw him on my bench in a few leagues. If he didn't pan out or he didn't go forward, you have the ability to cut him. But now you're sitting in a position where I don't have to spend 20% of my FAAB to get Christian Watson. So really, really good call out, Ethan. I will jump over to mine now. I didn't think we would ever say this name in a serious manner again, actually, based off of, we were making fun of him actually early in the season. Talking about Paris Campbell. We were making fun of him because he was on the field like 98. It was something really crazy. I forget the exact numbers in the 90s, high 90s, and he had like no stats the first like 3 to 4 weeks. And when I mean no stats, like just like one target a game or something ridiculous like that. So we were just kind of making fun of him. But really, the last few times that Matt Ryan, who had the whole debacle, obviously he got benched in week 8, and he had, God, what's his actual name? I never can pronounce it right. Sam Ellinger, who, God bless his soul, and I'm sure he has a great family, but he was looking lost out there, and he got put in a terrible position. But Matt Ryan, thanks to Jeff Saturday, which that itself is a whole nother thing. I think Ethan might touch on that later.
We will, but it's been a wild ride over there.
It's been a wild ride to have somebody with no coaching ability, but he made a good decision. He put Matt Ryan back into the game, which
whoa, you said no coaching ability, no coaching experience. He clearly has ability.
He does have the ability. He coached high school, so there's some
yes, some experience,
some experience
no NFL
in there.
Experience, but apparently all the ability in the world. I mean,
well, at least he has common sense because he put freaking Matt Ryan back in the game. Like,
which you had said that they needed to do. You're like, what is this?
3 weeks ago. Like, it's just ridiculous. I couldn't believe that they made that decision. And then after that, the first week of performance, I'm like, there's no way they're going to let him do this again. Did it again, was even worse. But I say all this to loop back over to Paris Campbell because, the last 3 times that Matt Ryan and him have played together, his fantasy stats are as follows. Week 6, he had 18 points. He had 11 targets, 7 receptions, 57 yards, and a touchdown. Week 7, he had 23 points, 12 targets, 10 receptions, 70 yards, and a touchdown. And then this last week, he had 9 targets, 7 catches, 76 yards, and a touchdown. Yep. I think that's pretty good. So what I'm saying is Matt Ryan can't run. Well, actually, he did have a 36-yard run this week. Typically can't be mobile, and he's
still not the most mobile person out there, obviously. But it worked out this week. So
he is an older quarterback, has never been really super athletic in his time, and when he panics and throws the ball, Paris Campbell is really close to the line of scrimmage, and he gets peppered with targets. And when you're in a PPR or even half PPR league, that's what matters, right? And then because of how fast he is, and actually he does have some ability prior to what we've talked about before, he can break away and score touchdowns as well. So I think especially in PPR leagues, really worth a pickup and worthy of a flex play.
Yeah, for sure. And the way he's been playing, as long as Matt Ryan is in there, I think that's a good point and a good distinction, but it looks to be the case. For the foreseeable.
They go back to Sam Ellinger. I don't know what I'm gonna do, man. I'm not gonna be good. I'm not gonna be in a good spot.
Yeah, no, I completely understand. Yeah, no, for sure. But yeah, so it's interesting what can happen when situations change. Paris Campbell, Billy has been doing well, so good for him. And yeah, you definitely someone you want on your roster. As weird as that sounds.
Yep.
My next one here is going to be Jameson Williams. Okay. And here's the deal. We always talk about being a week early. This is someone that I'm at least a week early on because he's not going to play this week, right?
Yep.
But here's the thing about him. I mean, this was, coming out of the college season, the number 1 prospect at wide receiver in a draft that what we've seen has some pretty good wide receivers in it that have been fun to watch and have played very well. So what I would say to you guys is go out and grab him. If you have the ability to stash him and you're not desperately fighting for a playoff spot or something. He's only owned in 21% of leagues. And wait and see what happens when this guy actually gets back on the field. When he gets back on the field, he's going to be healthy at that point because the Lions have not rushed him back. They have not pushed for him to come back early. He has crazy speed. This is a very fast player, a very good route runner. Who's really a complete package at wide receiver coming out of Alabama, where they make good athletes. And so, I mean, they're all 5-star recruits in Alabama.
I just picture Nick Saban just has a machine in his back office.
Just
He's like, all right, we gotta make another running back. Let me just put in the formula for Derrick Henry.
Yeah, exactly.
Mad scientist.
Exactly. And so it's going to be definitely interesting. And be a week early, guys. Don't wait until he's coming back. It's going to cost you waiver wire if you wait until the week before he's going to play. It'll cost you more. And if you wait all the way up until he has his big breakout game in his first game, which is entirely possible, you could really be paying up for this guy. So.
No, I 100% agree. I have him in a dynasty league, so everything you said really made me smile, very very much so. And I have him actually. In a few redraft leagues. I think he's I think he should be worth the wait. The only concern I have is the Lions are not good, although they did win this last week, so it gives me a little bit of hope that they'll still try to be the Dan Campbell grits and still try to grind it out and try to win. I just worry that if they lose enough that they're not going to bring him back. So, but he should be coming back from all indications. That's just a subconscious worry.
Yeah, they have been bad, but I do think they want to see what they have in their rookie and to see what their offense looks like before this draft. So I actually think if I'm the Lions, I would be putting him in because you got to find out what you have.
Yeah, that's true.
So it's kind of a unique situation because they are a bad team, but I really do think they'll put him in right away when they're not worried about re-injury. The doctors come out and say there's no risk, or additional risk, right, of re-injury. Then I think they'll throw him right in.
No, I completely agree. Okay. Very good. All right, let me jump over to mine. I wanted to touch base on Nico Collins, currently 13% owned, Houston Texans wide receiver. Obviously not a great offense in general. Brandon Cooks is still there, but really this last week and I think week before that as well, Nico's starting to look like the better wide receiver of the two for Brandon Cooks, and a little bit more efficient with his catches. He had 10 targets, 5 receptions, 49 yards, and a touchdown this last week. So I think he's really like 1A, 1B with Brandon Cooks. Now, again, you'll have a little bit of inconsistency, but he's a young player still, as far as Nico. This is I believe it's his second or third year. I think he might have been injured his first. But he's also been injured these last couple of weeks as well and been out. So that's why you haven't heard much of him. Week 4 and 5, he had 5 targets, 3 catches, 82 yards, 6 targets, 4 catches, 65 yards. So he's really had some consistency going back to week 3 and kind of that lower flex range. But I think you can provide some stability in your flex, giving you kind of a good baseline with a little bit of touchdown upside because he's a bigger wide receiver.
Yeah. I think this is a great call. The other thing I really like about it is that Brandon Cooks has made it clear that he wants out in Houston. So I do think this is another situation where they're kind of like, all right, let's see what we have in Nico Collins. Let's give him a little bit more of the opportunities. And they have been doing that for the last couple of weeks here, and it's he's performed well. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So good little stash. Again, it's not going to break your world, but I think it's good to have some extra players that you can have some good flex value with. So.
Yes, for sure. And then Dakota's got some shout outs here that he would like to do that we'll kind of do with him. If you guys watched last week, you saw that Donovan Peoples-Jones was actually on both my list and Dakota's list because we were both just so in agreement about him. And as we saw this week, for good reason, right? He had a fantastic week.
He did, and he's still only 35% owned. Nobody wants him. Everybody does not want him on their roster, which is pretty crazy. I mean, the consistency is insane with his points and his again, he really hasn't gone off or had a big week. Maybe that's why he's at 35%, but man, he's sure consistent.
Yeah, and he hasn't had less than 9 points since week 4. So you're guaranteed 9 points since week 4. That's pretty solid. Now he's capping out at 15. For a flex play, that's great. It should be rostered in every league at that point. But here's the other thing, and here's the upside that we talked about last week that is still on its way, and that Deshaun Watson is coming back to this offense at some point.
Yeah.
And who knows what that means? But there's a chance that it means very, very good things for Donovan Peoples-Jones, for Amari Cooper. But you're not getting Amari Cooper unless you trade for him. You can go grab Donovan Peoples-Jones for free off of your waiver wire in
$3.99.
65% of leagues right now. It's kind of weird.
And I think his targets and everything will probably stay about the same. The biggest difference is the touchdown upside, right? With Deshaun Watson should be a little bit higher. Peoples-Jones is a great deep threat, and he is a great deep threat. And he's still been able to do that a little bit with Jacoby Brissett, but I think with Deshaun Watson, his proven ability to be able to hit the deep ball, I think that'll be expanded and you'll have a little bit more, touchdown upside. So I definitely agree. There should be some little bit of boost once he comes back.
Yeah, and touchdown upside is going to be big for him because he has, get this, 0 touchdowns on the air.
That's not a lot.
It's not because he can't. I mean, he's caught them before in his career, but this offense, obviously,
we have the same amount of touchdowns. That's crazy.
Yeah, we have the same amount of touchdowns as Donovan Peoples-Jones, who has had a great year yards-wise. I mean, his last games have been 71, 50, 74, 71, 81, 99 in yards. If you added a touchdown to half of those games, this dude would have been absolutely on fire. And Watson could bring that. They're going to pass more in the red zone with Deshaun Watson as their quarterback than they currently are with Jacoby Brissett. So
100%. I still love the pickup, and he's still available in a lot of leagues. So go pick him up. Bring that percentage up.
Yes, and then Dakota wanted us to mention Terrence Marshall because he had that big 43-yard catch, showcasing some burst and just someone that
I'm mad at him.
For why?
Because he had, it's not all his fault, I know, but he had that one great catch, looked amazing, and then he did nothing the rest of the game.
Yes, but he has shown the ability to have big play potential, and with Baker Mayfield coming in this next week, I'm not saying that it's going to be a better quarterback situation, but it is going to mix up maybe who gets the targets, which should be interesting to see if it is more Terrence Marshall. So
that's true.
Kadarius Toney is only 52% owned.
Really right on the cusp there, but we talked about it early in the show. He would be my number one pickup if he's available out there.
Yeah, this is someone. As soon as the trade was made, we've been saying, look, this is a potential league winner because of just the situation he's in and the talent. So, guys, go if Kadarius Toney is not owned in your league, spend whatever you have to spend to go get him.
Wow, dropping the full bag, huh?
I dropped the bag on Toney. I would. I dropped the bag for sure. This is a league winner. People are gonna look at at the end of the
season. Please say it again.
Like,
I need to hear it one more time.
This is a league winner, and I know you have him in like every league that I'm in with you. So
I want you to say it.
And so as much as it sucks, I do think it's still the truth, and he's in a great situation. He's a uber talent, who's about to get pelted with targets this next week. With
the injuries, especially with Miko Hardman and then Juju having the concussion, I think this will be a Toney week.
Yeah, and if we're completely wrong, drop him next week or whatever else. But I mean, the odds of that are so low.
Well, you already had a great week this last week, so I mean,
that's true.
Even if it's hard, and the catches he made, I was gonna say, hey, I mean, it's not like he exploded, but I mean, he had a pretty good week. So.
Whatever you're thinking about spending on Toney this week, I can almost guarantee you it's gonna double after next week. That's what I'll put on.
Damn.
Like I said, I was waiting for someone in that Kansas City Chiefs offense to stand up and be the wide receiver one. Turns out they had
Juju started to. I do want to say that, like right before he got killed by this concussion, he really started to make some plays out there, but then you almost die, and we'll see what happens after that. Because I don't mean to make fun of it, but man, it looked terrible.
Yeah, no, seriously.
So, I hope he comes out okay. It sounds like he is. So.
Yes, for sure. Sounds like everything's going to be fine. We hope that obviously Juju's fine, for personal reasons as well as fantasy. So.
Yep. A couple stashes just want to bring up really fast, and then we can definitely move on. Traylon Burks is at 19%. He just came back from that injury this last week. His snap percentages was still only at 50%, coming back off that injury, and he still was targeted and was involved. So again, I think this is more of a stash, but we talked about stashes before, and I know Ethan highlighted Christian Watson, but that was still more of a stash than play, right? When you
Yep.
talked about him last week, so something to consider. Maybe another one to put on your bench. Um, we talked about him, I think, last week as well. Odell Beckham Jr. As a reminder, he's at 46%. Another good stash. He's kind of narrowed down his teams into who he wants to play for, and my sneaking suspicion that the Rams are no longer on the list. Is that fair to say?
Yes. Yeah. I think it's safe. I think we're good there.
I think
Odell's hunting
we're
for
good.
another ring, so I don't think he's going to the Rams.
Go to Buffalo.
Well,
That would be
is
that would
is
be insane.
is Josh Allen's elbow a problem?
That's a good question.
We're gonna ask that in a minute, but if it
Okay,
isn't, then he should go to Buffalo. But if it is,
then don't go to Buffalo.
yeah, exactly. So
Then avoid Buffalo. So, um,
yeah,
and then one other one, Dehan Dotson. He played this last week, but he was still limited coming off that long-term injury that he had. So something, maybe not even this one. I don't know about maybe even stashing. I just keep an eye on him. He had a really good streak at the beginning of the year where he had a touchdown a week for I think it was 3 to 4 weeks straight. And so as he gets more involved in that offense, he could still have that little bit of upside there. So
and the offense seems to play a lot better whenever he's on the field. If we're just
it
being
it
honest,
does. Yeah.
so it's kind of one of those weird things where having another wide receiver come back actually kind of boosts, in my opinion, Curtis Samuel a little bit. Terry McLaurin's kind of been hyper targeted since he's been gone, but
Yeah, Heineke and Terry McLaurin are like best buds, man. Which makes sense. Target the guy that's always open.
yeah, for sure.
I don't know why Carson Wentz can't figure that out, but that's a whole different story. Um, then one last thing I want to throw out there. This is just for the Mike Williams and Keenan Allen owners out there that are dealing with waiting to see if they're going to play this week. One that I would pick up because Josh Palmer is probably already rostered in a high percentage of leagues, but DeAndre Carter actually is a good pickup to have in case either or both of those players are out. He had a great week this last week, and is seeing a lot of work. And so I think that would be one to have on your roster, especially if you are a Keenan Allen or Mike Williams owner.
Yeah, completely agree. Good call out, and it good to pick up just kind of in general as well, to be honest. So
Yep, perfect. All right, anything else you want to talk about? Wide receivers?
no, let's get into the streamers, QBs, and tight ends.
Let's do it. This is it's starting to get very, very thin.
Yeah. I mean, it's always
To an
been kind of
extent.
thin. I
That's true. Good
like to
point.
be honest, QB especially though has been pretty rough.
Yeah. I think the gems have been picked up like Justin Fields. So I think
Yeah.
now you're going back down. So
Yeah, for those of you who don't know, we always keep it under 50% for the free agency. So we don't want to be talking about some guy that is owned in over 50% of leagues, right? We're talking about people that are available in at least the majority of leagues for you guys. So under that 50% owned mark, it's getting pretty thin, is what we're saying. So
yes. Thank you for clarifying. So you want to get us started off?
sure, yeah, absolutely. So I have a tight end streamer with a caveat. So I have Isaiah Likely, and this is if you want to kind of pay attention and watch Mark Andrews this week. If Mark Andrews is out, start Isaiah Likely, 110%. Don't even think twice about it. Put him in. He's your guy. This is an excellent streamer who's only owned in like 22% of leagues. So definitely a great spot. It sounds like Mark Andrews might be back this week, right? And if that's the case, then Foster Moreau will be for the Raiders. There will be my streamer here for tight end, and this is more of actually kind of a pickup than a stream. Derek Carr loves throwing to his tight end. You've seen Darren Waller put up some great numbers previously. Now Moreau is not Darren Waller by any stretch of the imagination, but if he gets 5 or 6 targets a week, that's excellent for a tight end. So
No, I think that's great. Great pickup there for Likely. He looked good in the few games that Mark Andrews has been out, so I think that's great. And then I love the pickups there too. So um I'll go through mine then. For tight end, I went with Hayden Hurst. He's 48% owned. He's going to be versus Pittsburgh this week. He is coming off a bye, so I think that's why the ownership was a little bit lower. So you're able to pick him up a little bit cheaper. He has been pretty consistent with Joe Burrow out there, and with Jamar Chase still coming back on the injury, so still have some good target share work there too. He's been, really consistent, 10 points, 8 points, 8 points the last 3 weeks. So if you can get 8 points out of your tight end that you're streaming, you are, again, it's obviously not super ecstatic, but you're just glad you're not getting goosed, from that perspective. So
Yeah, that is the hard part about tight ends, is they can burn you pretty hard.
yes, absolutely. And you went through all of them, right, Ethan, because you talked about Foster Monroe. So,
Yep.
okay, I'll jump through. Daniel Jones, I cheated this one a little bit. I just wanted to put it out there, and then I have a backup that's under 50%. But Daniel Jones is at 64%. He's playing Houston this week. I do like Daniel Jones just for the fact that, first off, they're facing Houston, which is a terrible defense.
Wait, no,
They've
they're
been,
playing. They're playing Detroit. Remember?
oh, so another terrible defense. Okay, sounds
Yeah,
good.
different terrible defense. Yeah, you're
Different
still
terrible
right.
defense.
Just a different
Yeah.
terrible defense is all. But
And
anyway.
actually, I do like them because Detroit would have a little bit more options to score, even though Giants have a better defense. That I think Detroit has a better chance of scoring compared to Houston would be. So I think that actually helps Daniel Jones. But anyways, I do like Daniel Jones, one for the matchup, but more importantly, he's been pretty consistent, especially with the rushing. He's added a little bit of baseline there, so I think he'd be a good start. Obviously, if he's owned, which he is owned in a little bit more of leagues at 64%, my backup would be Taylor Heineke at 12% versus Houston. I know he had a terrible week this last week, but it was against the Philadelphia Eagles, and they've been really tough against quarterbacks this year. So I know he had 5 points, but the 3 weeks before that, he had 2 touchdowns, 1 touchdown, 2 touchdowns, and over 200 yards in 2 of those 3 games. So based off the matchup and what he's done this year, I think he'd be a good streamer to look at.
Plus, getting
And then,
Jahan Dotson back, and and lots of weapons at wide receiver
yeah,
over there.
the only thing I think Carson's coming back. I think it might
Next
be
week.
next. Is it next week? Okay, so he should still be playing. Okay, just want to make sure I wasn't thinking that was a week early.
Yeah.
And then for my defense or streaming defense, I know it's kind of funny. You probably can't pick up New England and start them because they're probably highly owned, but they are coming off a bye, so you can pick up and start them against the Jets. Or if you want to get crazy, or even crazier, you can do the opposite side on the same game. You could pick up the New York Jets and play against New England because both are great matchups for defenses. And I think this is going to be a low scoring game on both sides. And they're both the defenses are going to make plays. So I think if you can start either one of these defenses, you're in a good spot.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. I love starting. I think the Jets defense, honestly, like low key, might even be the better of the two.
Oh wow,
The way that they've been playing, Sauce is just so good. He's so good.
he is really good. Yeah, yeah.
Um,
I did see the list of who he's played and what they done against him, and it's pretty impressive.
yeah. So on my end here, I'm gonna go talk a little bit like you did. I'm gonna use both sides of the same game that should be a low-scoring game. Even though it wasn't last matchup, the Denver Broncos versus the Las Vegas Raiders that are going to be playing this next week here. Now here's the deal. Denver has only 56% owned right now. They are the number one defense as far as points against them, which is pretty great going into a banged-up Raiders team at the moment. And then the Raiders are going to be playing against the worst offense in the NFL because the Broncos are also the worst offense in the NFL. So it's kind of a win-win. That should be a low-scoring game. I know it's a division game. They can get a little wacky. but I do think that I would be willing to take that risk and start either one of those defenses this week. And the Raiders defense is not 50% owned. It's well below. I think it's 43, but still low enough that you should be able to grab one of those two. So
No, I think that's great call there too. So, all right, sounds good. Do we want to touch on Dakota's couple streamers here? I think he only had one, right?
yeah, you just had Cole Kmet here. Shout out to him. Only 52% owned. Was the tight end 2 last week, is what he was saying. So
If you're the 48, get him is what he says. So, and it was capitalized GETHIM. So he's pretty aggressive. That you need to get off your butt right now and go put a waiver claim in. Go get him.
That's not get him. It's get him.
Get him. No, I do like Cole Kmet. He's had a great couple of weeks here. The only concern, and we had this concern for quite a long time, is just that the passing volume of Justin Fields. I think Cole Kmet's really benefited from some great touchdowns, and that can continue. Touchdowns are kind of more of a not very sticky thing week to week, but I still think he's a good pickup. I just wouldn't expect. What I'm trying to say is, don't expect like a top 5 tight end every week. I'd more like to think that he's probably in the top 15 to 12, for tight ends.
Yes,
but I think he's still
give a shout out to someone a little lower too, in Juwan Johnson, by the way.
Yeah, I think both are great streamers actually. If you're looking for streamers, so.
Yes, yeah, for sure. Juwan Johnson's really had a good run
here. Yeah, he has.
Over the last 4 games, so.
Really under the radar too, just because the Saints have not looked good either. So.
Yeah, for sure.
Excellent. Yeah, those are our streamers this week. Go pick them up. Good luck on the streams there. I think we are ready to go to our good and bad and the ugly. Let's talk about week 10.
Yeah, for sure. Let's talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly. How do we want to do this week? Do you want to start off with the ugly and work our way back? Do we want to start good and get ugly? What do you think?
Let's start good and go to ugly. Let's get super negative. Feeling dark.
I love it. So we're gonna start bright. We're gonna start like Ted Lasso and end up like Greg House. It'll be fun. So I'll start us off actually, because speaking of Ted Lasso, Jeff Saturday is Ted Lasso. Not that he doesn't have any coaching experience or doesn't understand the game like Ted Lasso does. But if you haven't seen that show on Apple Plus, it's fantastic. It's about Jason Sudeikis going overseas and coaching a soccer team. And his positivity brings the team together, and they all become better men for it and better players because of it. And Jeff Saturday, to me, like, he is that guy. And I just can't help but, like, be rooting for him. And I don't know if he was a good hire or a bad hire or whatever else. All I know is that, like, they won, which is awesome, and I'm just hoping that the Colts like do something cool now, because what a fun, wild story of a guy who also people are kind of underplaying the fact that he was actually a consultant for the team. Like, I get he's like high school football coach Jeff Saturday. You mean like Hall of Fame NFL player and current consultant for the Colts? Jeff Saturday also is another way to describe him on his resume, by the way, for this job. But
Ethan.
But I'm just saying, like, look, that's just the truth. So I don't think it was as bad of a hire as everyone was saying. I thought it was kind of disingenuous by a lot of the media, if I'm being honest, on some of that stuff. And yes, I'm sure that he's had a lot of hurdles, and the coaches in that locker room are probably pretty mad because they are not getting a chance to step up, despite the fact that they were waiting in line, and I totally get that. But that's another thing he had to overcome in order to get this win, and they did it, which is cool. It's just a fun story to me, and I love it. So this is my good.
Oh, I love it. I love the call out. Yeah, it's super shocking hire for sure. I would definitely agree with that. But yeah, he definitely has the pedigree to come in and coach. I mean, he's worked with one of the best QBs ever to play with Peyton Manning, and he's been around the league. He's been obviously as a consultant as well, and obviously high school football coach. But But no, yeah, it's a great story. I think that's the best thing to point out here is that he is an upbeat guy, very positive, and he won, and he made the best decision that any coach can make and actually play a competent quarterback for the Colts, which won my heart immediately. So that's all he had to do.
Put Matt Ryan in.
All right, Ed. You know what's best for you and the team. Good Lord. All right, my good of this week, and it should be pretty obvious to everybody out there, but I just want to highlight again the game that was the game of the year, the Bills versus the Vikings game. This had a little bit of everything, had a great start by the Bills, building that lead. I think it was 24-10 at one point, and then the Vikings started happening, making plays on both sides of the ball. Josh Allen throwing some picks. And then, oh my gosh, the one thing I wanted to highlight is towards the end of the game, on one of the last drives to try to tie it up. It was fourth and what I think it was like 18 or something. It was pretty long, maybe a little bit shorter than that. But Kirk Cousins goes back, throws the ball, and then JJ makes one of the most ridiculous catches I've ever seen.
Insane.
I honestly probably. I know we say this sometimes to be hyperbolic, but that may have been the best catch I've seen anybody ever make. I mean, he went up as high as he possibly can. A defender was draped all over him. It was fourth down. If they did not get this first down, the game would have been over. And he went up and caught it like one-handed, brought it back to his body while falling backwards. I mean, the catch was just absolutely mind-boggling. It just doesn't make any sense. And on top of that, he basically did almost everything himself that whole drive. It was just insane, the talent, what JJ is. And then the Vikings came back and were able to tie it, send it. I'm sorry. They got down to the one, went for it on fourth, got stuffed, which I actually think. I don't know if you saw this either, but I think they
had 12 guys on the field.
No, they got so Kirk Cousins did a sneak, and it was such in a big pile you couldn't really see where him and the ball were, but it looked like he crossed. But they technically stopped him on fourth down, and so Buffalo got the ball back like on the 1 inch line.
Sure.
And
so
then
I think on the play before that, also, by the way, the Buffalo Bills had 12 players on the field.
That's right.
It was somewhere.
Yep.
It was right on that goal line. I don't know if it was the third down or not, but it was. They did have 12 players out there as well at one point.
Yeah,
which was not called.
Gotcha.
So,
I didn't know that. I missed that part of it.
I just saw
remember
it on Twitter afterwards. That's why. But
okay.
wild.
Yeah, but and then the turnover on downs. I think, in my opinion, he did get across. But anyways, they couldn't confirm it. Turnover on downs, and then the unthinkable happened. Josh Allen fumbles a snap, and they land on it to get the actual touchdown after all that to win the game. I mean,
insane.
You can't really even write that. So just be part of that game, watch it from start to finish. To see everything that happened with that. I mean, absolutely crazy. I think this is definitely a potential Super Bowl preview. Again, coming into this game, I think the Vikings were a little bit doubted just based off of the opponents they played and something like that. But you go into Buffalo and you beat Buffalo, even with Josh Allen having some elbow issues. I mean, you got to have some respect put on you. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Beating Buffalo, period. For any team, they're really the team to beat going into the season. So I mean, it's a big deal this year. So.
Yeah, amazing game. So type of game you remember where you're at, and I think you'll see that one going forward.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Awesome. All right, we got all the warm and fuzzies out of the way.
Yes, let's get into the bad here.
In the bad. Do you want to start us off?
Sure. So we kind of had a weird little thing that we did previously about how the Eagles hadn't played like a really good quarterback in their undefeated streak that they've had going on here last week, and I kind of talked about that a little bit. And so I think that one of the things that scared me about their little streak here was that they hadn't really beat anybody, that great. And now they go out and they lose to the Commanders. I mean, don't get me wrong, the Eagles are still an amazing team. They're still probably the team to beat in the NFL right now. But this was a bad loss for them. And what was a tough game and a hard fought game that they honestly just they blew. They had multiple drop passes in the fourth quarter on big plays, and they as a team just couldn't put it together and couldn't stop Taylor Heineke, which is kind of a strange, or really less Heineke and more just the offense in general. So I mean, yeah, what do you think, Eli?
Yeah, no, I agree. I really think it was they got a couple things. I think one, they really got taken to on the ground. I think the rushing game for the Commanders was really the catalyst that really put
True.
them
Yeah, I shouldn't
over.
have said Heineke. I regretted that as soon as I said it. But
No,
yeah,
no,
I
you're
agree.
good. But yeah, I think it was really because their defense, especially their cornerbacks, are really amazing and they have a really good pass rush. But it seemed like they really got kind of manhandled on the ground actually. So I thought
Yeah.
that was very interesting to see. And then the other part of it is just kind of a crazy game. They had to have some things happen. The Commanders did in order to win this game. I mean, couple things that come to mind: that AJ Brown pass to, or the pass to AJ Brown kind of down the field that turned into an interception. I mean, that actually was a good pass. It hit AJ Brown's hands, but the defender just came over and really took it from him. So
Yeah.
in that, how many times does that actually happen in a game?
Very rare.
The defender, yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that was
Definitely.
one thing. I think the penalty, obviously, the biggest thing people are talking about at the end of the game with Heineke kind of sliding and then getting hit
Right.
by the defensive end. I think that's kind of something that's kind of fluky a little bit. Doesn't always happen. And
It
then
doesn't always get called because
yeah,
that was right as he was kind of hitting the ground. It was really a borderline call that they, in my opinion, probably shouldn't have gave at the end of the game. You hate to see games decided by penalties if they don't have to be,
right.
but technically against the rules. So I mean, they called it.
Yeah, exactly. It was
Yeah.
like you said, it's by the book, but it's a tough call,
Yeah.
tough call to make in general.
Yeah.
To have that, especially at the end of the game. So and then they also had some injuries. Like AJ Brown went out for a few plays, I know, but he looked like he injured his ankle. And then of course a big one, what we talked about was Goddard, getting injured at the beginning of the game, which that was another missed call. He should have got the face mask call there.
Oh yeah.
He really got
That was
pulled down
bad
by it.
too. Yeah,
Yeah.
like a bad neck jerking pull too, not like a little one.
No,
Like there are
not
face
not a.
masks that you're like, it wasn't that big of a deal. Sometimes you're like, I thought his head was gonna come off, and that was his head might come off one, for sure.
Yes, exactly. And now he's injured. I don't know if it was from that exact play, but now he's injured and out. So I think there's a lot of that. So I'm not taking any away from the Commanders. I think they definitely played a great game. Heineke played good enough to win. But really the running game, and then some really fluky stuff kind of happening. I think propelled them to a victory. So I think, in my opinion, the Eagles are still the team to beat based off of the offense and even the defense. I think the defense is still good with the pass rushers and especially the defensive backs. But maybe we found a weakness that
Yeah, stop the run.
they can't stop the run. So we'll have to see how that does going forward.
Yeah, yeah, and hopefully it's a wake up call game for them. But who knows? It'll be interesting to see. So
Yeah. Yep. All right. My bad here this week. I want to talk just briefly about Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So I briefly talked about him when we were talking about Pacheco, but I just wanted to highlight and kind of put this in perspective from where he started to where he's at now. So like we talked about this past week, he only had 4 snaps. So he's on the field 4 times this whole game of this last week. And that is a far cry for where he was at the beginning of the year. I mean, I think we talked about it a few times on this podcast for when we talked about some trade targets. We talked about trying to trade high with Clyde Edwards-Helaire just for the fact he was really living off of touchdowns in the first few weeks. But look at his fantasy points let's say the first 4 weeks of the season. So in a full PPR, he had 22 points week 1, he had 15 points week 2, had 14 points week 3, and week 4 he had 22 points. And now he's at the point where he just put up a goose egg and had 4 snaps. I mean, that is a huge fall from grace from where he was at the beginning of the season. And you drafted this, this running back, not extremely high, so it's not like you wasted a first, second round pick, but still, this is a valuable pick. You picked him up probably in the 6th, 7th round, somewhere in there. There's still some great assets on board. We talked about this before the podcast started, Ethan, but Mari Cooper, Kenneth Walker, Christian Kirk, Damian Pierce are some of the people that you had available that you could have took in place of Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And you're really kicking yourself to know that's where you're at with this current standing. And to think that he came from, he was a first round pick just a few years ago, I think in the mid 20s, and the expectations were so high coming from the LSU Joey Burrow offense and the pass catching ability and everything like that. And I know I listened to some other fantasy analysts, and they talked about coming into this year that the reason why he didn't play good last year was he had a kidney issue that he'd been dealing with all year. That's why he wasn't where he was supposed to be. And yeah, I just watching him, he's looked like a running back, like a okay to maybe good running back, especially in the passing game. But I've never been, at least in the NFL piece of it, been overly whelmed by his talent from what I've seen on the field. So, but it's just crazy to me to go from first round pick. You're going to be involved with everything. Even at the beginning of the year, you got this great streak of 4 weeks where you're scoring touchdowns. You're involved. You're part of a committee, but at least you're kind of the lead dog in that committee. And now you are basically written off. Now it can change, but from what we saw this last week, having 4 snaps, you are an afterthought.
Not someone that you can start in
No.
fantasy football until it changes, and someone that, quite frankly, if it doesn't change, you're dropping. So
if you need to, I mean, if you're going to pick up, and that's a question we should ask, like if you're going to pick up, let's say Rashard White or his running mate Pacheco or Gus Edwards, I honestly probably would pick up all 3 of those over him.
Yeah, I think you're right, and it hurts to say because this is someone that I drafted this year. Not in too many leagues, but still. I mean, I think that at some point you have to bite the bullet and go, look, it is what it is. And I do think we're kind of getting there. If not this week, if it happens again next week, for sure. Then he's Then it's done.
Then he's just he's not even really an insurance running back either, because you got McKinnon there, and it's like they've kind of filled out the roles. So it's just very interesting. It's something I just want to highlight because it just shows draft pedigree can get you so far, but if you're not performing how you should perform, you're going to get replaced.
Yeah, at the end of the day, the NFL is a "What have you done for me lately?" league.
Yes, absolutely, not for long. And Clyde Edwards-Helaire is not for long on fantasy rosters, and maybe not for long in NFL rosters either.
Yeah, unless something changes, for sure.
Yep,
for sure. Okay, so I'm kind of excited about my ugly because it's just interesting to me. And Josh Allen, is a great NFL quarterback, and will continue to be a great NFL quarterback. I've been a hater in the past on Josh Allen, but I will not be a hater. This is not hate on Josh Allen. This is genuine concern because his passing the last 3 games has not been the same. It just has not been the same. So going in, right, to the last 3 weeks, okay, he had passer ratings of 112, 128, 95, 134, 117. The last 3 weeks have been 75, 47, 78. Okay. That's a significant difference. He has thrown 3 touchdowns, okay, and 6 interceptions. He has had 3 fumbles. So he's had 3 fumbles, okay, only lost one of them, but has had 3 fumbles and 6 interceptions in the last 3 games. And this is uncharacteristic of Josh Allen. I mean, if this was Taylor Heineke, we wouldn't even be talking about it. Be like, yeah, that's par for the course, whatever. But this isn't. This is Josh Allen. This is the best quarterback possibly in the NFL, or at least top 3. Right?
Yep.
And I think as good as he is, and as much as he's still been able to, put up decent scoring numbers. He put up 30 points this last week against Minnesota, which is very good. The truth is, and the reality is that his passing game has not been the same since that Week 7 injury. It just hasn't. And it gives me concern. And it looks like things are actually getting better. This last week, Week 9, has been the best of those 3 weeks. And it actually looked like he was coming back a bit. But there was a rumor for a while there that he was going to have to get Tommy John surgery. That is a major surgery that would put him out for probably the rest of the season. Okay. So, I mean, it's interesting. It's interesting. I mean, his 2 lowest completion percentage games came in Week 7 and Week 8 back to back in the last 3 weeks.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, he's thrown a lot of picks, and has not been very efficient with his passing, percentage wise, and even fantasy points wise. The last 3 weeks, he's really at 21 or 22 points in 6-point leagues, and before that, you're expecting around 30, for him in the first half of the year. So there has been a big drop. It could be part of it, could be the elbow. I would assume at least that has something to do with it. But at the same time, if you're out there, you're responsible for what you put up. So yeah, it is a little bit more concerning. And maybe, as far as fantasy impacts, just lower your expectations a little bit when you're starting your fantasy roster, what you're going to get out of him. And play some maybe higher upside players because of he's not himself right now.
Yeah, and to be honest, the big concern for me is like, okay, so if this is just he can push through this and he's going to get better, each week, and that might be the case. Because like I said, this last week has been better than the 2 before it, but then it's not really a big deal. But my concern is, can this last the rest of the season? Is there a chance that Josh Allen's elbow doesn't get better?
Yeah.
And if that's the case, it's like, in my opinion, it might be time. I mean, if I had Josh Allen in leagues, I might be shopping him around a little bit just to see. I mean, if somebody's going to pay you full price for him, just to be risk averse, if you can go out and get, a great, quarterback, maybe, I'm trying to think of someone who, and package it with a great, tight end or running back or wide receiver or whatever you need, right? And get a very good quarterback like a Lamar Jackson, right? And a wide receiver for Josh Allen. That's a trade I'd be very interested in at the moment. And maybe I'll be completely wrong on this, but just because it's a risk aversion thing for me. Like, you know what I mean?
No, yeah, it makes a lot of sense. You want to avoid further injury or the inefficiencies that he's been playing with. So you kind of look to do a upgrade. I don't think it's not the dumbest idea in the world. Like I think that has some merit to it. It always depends on who you're getting back and what your confidence level is in them as well. But yeah, I think it's something to at least explore out there to see, what else would be available.
Yeah, we're not saying sell low. Don't go off and sell Josh Allen for pennies on the dollar. But if someone's willing to pay full price right now with the concerns that you might have about his health, well, in the worst case scenario will be, they've also lost 2 out of their last 3 games, right? So the worst case scenario would be that they're worried that his elbow is not getting better. He hurts it worse, or they just think that they can't win with him in his condition right now, and he has to go get surgery. I mean, he could be out for the rest of the season pretty quick here.
Yeah, it's true.
So if someone's willing to pay full price before this gets to be like a big, because he's still putting up 20 points a week, people are still going to be thinking of him as Josh Allen at this point, in my opinion. It's like, anyway.
No, yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, I agree. So something to consider at least, and maybe lower your expectations and keep an eye on the injury reports as you go forward.
Yes. Yeah, and hopefully for Josh Allen's sake, this is just a small stinger
Blip on the
thing
radar.
that will go away. And there were signs of that this last week too, so proceed with caution. But
We will see. My ugly, I just wanted to talk about the situation in general with the Rams. I think there's a lot of fantasy ugly in here, but also just, man, some player ugly. I mean, we talked about them a little bit throughout the year. I think they are one of the biggest disappointments in team slash fantasy. And I'll talk a little bit about kind of each position. But Matt Stafford has had an injury, but other than that, he has not been on the fantasy radar basically at all. As far as even a streaming quarterback, he's not been worth even really looking at this year. And now he of course is injured. And in addition to that, his top wide receiver is now going to be out 4 weeks. And I know Cooper Kupp owners are just beside themselves having, the one player that actually was having a good year on the Rams, Cooper Kupp, is now going to be out as well. So that takes their best weapon away from the Rams, best weapon away from Matthew Stafford. It makes it that much harder. We already talked about Allen Robinson and the ghost of Allen Robinson averaging 3 to 4 targets a game and only a few fantasy points. And the offensive line and run game have been one of the worst in the league. I just bring all this up just to talk about, coming into the year, if we put it in perspective, the Rams were supposed to be a top tier offense. They're supposed to be a Super Bowl contender. They brought everybody back. They signed Allen Robinson. They had some good running backs. Cam Akers was finally going to be healthy. Now you look at it, 10 weeks in, their star players are injured. Matthew Stafford is injured, but you come back playing inefficient. Their top wide receiver that they paid is very inefficient and not playing very well. Offensive line is one of the worst in leagues. Cam Akers left, basically quit and came back. And their running game is like historically low. And now they're in a spot where they've lost so many games that they're really basically out of the playoff hunt. I'm not going to say for sure, but they are in a spot where it's going to be really hard for them to make the playoffs. And the hardest thing about this whole situation is they sold out to win the Super Bowl, last year, and it worked. Obviously, they got the Super Bowl ring, and everybody's living happy, and they thought they'd bring everybody back again to do the same thing and go for another run here, and that's not happening. So now you've mortgaged a lot of your future with these picks to win now, and now you're not winning. So what do you do now is the question. So do they still keep everything together and try to go on a run when everybody's healthy next year, or do they start piecing this out and really trying to get some assets outside of with the people that they currently have? So it's
here's
very
the other
interesting.
thing too, and I think you bring up a great point about the picks. But the other thing that they did to load up for that Super Bowl was that they also signed veteran players towards the end of their career on long-term contracts in order to be able to pay them more, right? And kind of mortgage their salary cap future as well. So it's not even just the draft picks.
Yeah.
But they have also done this for salary cap too, which makes those players then hard to trade away for draft picks again. Because yes, everyone loves Bobby Wagner. There's nothing wrong with that. But Bobby Wagner on a 6-year contract, you know what I mean, at the age of 30.
Right.
And it's a massive, big deal. I mean, it's harder to trade him for picks because teams don't want to pay it.
It's true. Yeah.
So I mean, they really went all in, and congrats to them. They won the Super Bowl, which, I mean, they should have because they pushed everything into the pile. But yeah, you're right. Not only are they bad, but they're also screwed.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just interesting. So it'd be something to really watch the next few weeks, see how everything goes and how they play, and then Yeah, see what they do. See what they do through this coming off season, and they're at the point where you're not playing for much. So
Yeah, it's sad, for a new franchise over there in LA. So, but yeah, it's been a rough season for them, but not for the fantasy play callers, and not for our viewers. We have
yeah,
had a heck of a run here. I hope you guys are
last
having a heck of a run.
no, absolutely. Last few weeks we've been batting pretty heavily here, hitting some home runs. More the reason to follow us on Twitter at our handles here, and then also just watch the podcast every week. Get some updates. We share great information on Twitter. We post our podcast there as well. And yeah, stay on top. We want to make sure we give you the information and can pick up everybody a week early and get yourself in a position, especially with the playoffs coming up here, to win a championship.
Yes, most definitely, and thank you guys for watching. The people that have been with us, and tell your friends about us. If you would, we have been right a few times, so
Yeah.
we'll appreciate a
What
like
are the
and
kids?
subscribe for the YouTube
What,
algorithm.
what do the kids say? Like and subscribe. Hit the like button.
Hit that like button.
Hit it. Don't think about it. Just do it.
Hey, and may your bids for FAAB be $1 over.
Always one.
$1
Good luck out
over.
there.
Peace.